Hey, what's up, everyone? It is Mr. Sokoa, and welcome to our first ever Wolfpack podcast. Beautiful. Of course, we have our Pause Up production crew that is here with us. Of course, these are the bright young students that are working extremely hard here, that are part of our newspaper here at PS1, and of course, now part of our podcast here for our after-school program. My two students that I have here on our first episode of our podcast is fifth grader Ethan and fourth grader Ace. Ethan, how you doing today?
I'm doing good.
Yeah. Ace, how you doing today?
I'm doing amazing.
Are you guys excited for this podcast? Yeah? Who watches? You guys watch podcasts a lot?
He's a little nervous, but
It's all right. There's nothing to be nervous about, okay? Now, I want to address, before we get into our conversation, I want to address all of our viewers out there, the ones that are going to be watching this podcast on YouTube, because that's where we're going to have our podcast. We're going to have our own YouTube channel, of course, and you can find our YouTube channel by searching the Wolfpack podcast. And in case you haven't noticed, and now here is where our number one rule of this podcast will be, is if you're watching at home, whether you're watching in our classroom, whether you're watching at home with mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, aunts, uncles, brothers, sister, whoever you're watching with, you have to tell them anytime we say the name of the podcast, you have to howl. So anytime you hear the Wolfpack podcast, you have to howl, okay? We are going to set some trends. I know everyone knows what trend setting is when we're watching TikTok videos and all that stuff. So we're going to be counting on you at home to howl like a wolf when you hear our podcast name. And guess what? That means, let's just say you're not watching at home. Let's say you're watching it in the car on your headphones and you hear the name. You got to howl in the car. You might scare some people in the car. If you're on a bus and you're watching it and you hear the name, you've got to howl. That's our rule for this podcast, okay? The rule of the Wolfpack podcast. There we go. All right, so now that we set up the rule, before we even get started for this whole thing, is we do have to thank some people first. And I want to get the thank yous out of the way. Obviously, our wonderful principal here at PS1, Mrs. Petrangelo, and our assistant principal, Ms. Shahade, for allowing this to take place. Go ahead, audience. If you want to clap it up, you can clap it up. Thank you. Right? We even have a special, we do have an applause sound effect. You can't hear it here in the room, but our audience can hear it. Okay? We also want to thank the company Warner Brothers Discovery. Who's ever heard of Warner Brothers Discovery? It's a movie company, okay? Yeah, we got a couple of hands in here. Well, they're the ones that funded our Donors Choose project. They're the ones that gave us this equipment, the microphones, our audio set, our other camera that we have. So we want to thank them as well. So let's give a round of applause for Warner Brothers Discovery, okay? All right, so the way we're going to do it with our podcast, and Ethan and Ace, you, of course, were the first two chosen to be on the podcast, and we're going to have all of our Pause Up production members part of this podcast as we go through it. But the one thing I like to do, and my fifth graders are going to recognize this from our earlier time in the school year, I want to just start with a quote and what the quote means to you, okay? So this quote comes from probably one of my favorite authors. It's an old author, and it's because when I was a kid, way younger than you, one of my favorite shows to watch was Winnie the Pooh. And the person that created the Winnie the Pooh character was A.A. Milne. And he came out with a quote, "You are braver than you believe, and stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think." So when I give you that quote, and Ethan, we'll start with you. What do you think that quote means? I'll say it one more time. You're braver than you believe, and stronger than you seem and smarter than you think. What do you think that means to you?
I would think that it means like always believe in yourself and never give up.
Right? Always believing in yourself and never give up. Ace, what do you think when you hear a quote like that?
I sort of agree with Ethan with the never give up, but I think it's like follow your dreams.
Right? Also, you're brave. You believe in yourself. You're stronger than you seem and smarter than you think. Right? It's a great quote. If you ever seen Winnie the Pooh, he's got some good books and some good stories. All right. So what's going to be the purpose of this podcast? Well, we're going to kind of get to know our elementary school students. We also want to pass off any sort of positive messages that we have to one another, even beyond our PS1 community. And we want to give advice and tips, right? Because listen, adults aren't the only one that go through their routines of the day of getting up in the morning, getting ready for work, and going out and doing. Students do it as well, right? You're getting your education. So this is what this podcast is going to be all about. We're going to have conversations. We're going to be talking to you. We're going to be talking to our friends and really just giving ourselves words of encouragement and advice. We have fifth graders here in the room. Ethan is one of our co-hosts today who will be moving on to junior high school at the end of the year. We have our fourth graders that are in here that'll be moving up to fifth grade going into their final year of elementary school. So there's going to be a bunch of different topics, and who knows, we may have special guests that come and join us on this podcast from time to time. So we'll see what happens. So let's get into our first topic of discussion, and that is, like I said, right? Adults, we get ourselves up. We go to work, right? Moms, dads, aunts, uncles, grandma, grandpas, whatever. We get up, we go to work. We have that routine of going to work, working in an office, working as a fireman, working as a sanitation worker. I want to know how you, the elementary school student, get yourself ready for the day to come into school and what your day is like going through a school day, all right? So Ace, I'm going to start with you, my man.
Okay.
Tell me what a day in the life it is like for Ace to get up, get ready to go to school, and like what's going through your mind? Because I know as a teacher, as some of your teacher, some of you that I teach, I'm driving to work and I'm thinking about what my day is going to consist like. What are we going to be learning about today? How do I want to help you learn and understand whatever the topic is that we're talking about? So Ace, you wake up in the morning, you're getting yourself ready for school. What's going through your head?
What's going through my head? And I'm like, oh man, another day of school. I'm really always like tired. I should really just go to bed earlier. And then, so.
I will tell you this. You're probably not the only one sitting in this room, and you're probably not the only one outside of the ones that are viewing this that go to bed very early. I'm sure we have a lot of students and friends that go to bed a little bit later than they should. So it's natural to feel tired in the morning, but it's always important to get a good night's sleep. All right, so you get up in the morning, you're getting ready to go to school. All right, what are you thinking about for the day? What specifically, like, are you eager or are you excited to, get to a certain subject for the day, especially like you may be learning something new? What excites you about coming to school?
What excites me about coming to school is mostly my friends, but I also want to learn something new, I guess. But
You have a favorite subject?
math.
Math. You like math, huh? What's your favorite part about math?
I just like multiplication.
Multiplication. All right. That's good for the future. If you want to be an engineer or a scientist, math is always good. Okay? And when you get into school, you see your friends for the day, even though you probably just saw them yesterday, or if we're coming back on a Monday from a weekend, we just came back from our midwinter break. What are some of the conversations you're having with your friends when you get to school?
I'm just like, hey, what's up, guys?
Anything in particular you're talking about?
I usually talk about this game that me and my friends like called My Sing Monsters.
Okay. All right. So having those types of conversations. And then as you're going from class to class, and you're going from math and ELA. Is there anything like you leave math? Like, did you feel like you learned something new?
I mean, sometimes, yes. Like today, I learned area and perimeter. I don't know how to say it.
Perimeter?
Yeah, perimeter.
Area perimeter?
Yeah.
That's important. That's going to be on a state test. It's going to be on a state test, all right? Be prepared for that, okay? All right, Ethan. The life of a fifth grader these days. And I know these fifth graders very well so far as we head into the month of March. But Ethan, I know you were shaking your head and we had this conversation. You go to bed early. You try to get yourself a good night's sleep. So tell me, take me through a day of Ethan getting up in the morning, getting ready for school. What's going through your head?
Well, I'm kind of like giving myself positive vibes and like trying not to fall asleep.
Trying not to fall asleep? Don't you go to bed early? You don't go to bed early. You go to
No.
bed late like everybody else?
Yeah.
Okay. What are you doing that you're going to bed late? Playing video
Well,
games?
No. I usually eat late, and sometimes me and my parents go out and eat.
Oh, all right. All right. So you get to school. You're getting ready for the day. What's your favorite subject?
Well, I like all of my subjects.
Wow, that's a smart answer. See, I'm Ethan's science and social studies teacher, so he obviously needs to make sure he says it's all the subjects that he likes. All right, but you get to school, like, just talk about how you're feeling. Like, again, all you students kind of have the same type of routine as adults do. It's just a little different. You're not making money coming to school. You're coming to learn, right? To prepare yourself for your, life that's ahead of you, your educational journey that's ahead of you, and potentially maybe a job that you want to have, in the future. But you come to school, what are you feeling like when you get to school? What are you looking forward to for the day when you get to school?
I'm usually looking forward to like learning more stuff about history because I'm really into history, and I usually like to learn a lot more topics.
History buff. Social studies teacher. See, he's got the right idea now. Get the right idea. Okay? You get in, you're going through your subjects, you're going through your day, conversation with some of your friends. The other thing, too, is you have a little bit of a different mindset than Ace does. You're in your final few months here at PS1. What has your time at PS1 meant to you?
Well, my time at PS1 meant to me, like, I really liked PS1 a lot, and I'm a little bit sad to, like, leave.
Everyone's sad to leave, I think, right? Such a great school community. I have to say, I'm pretty excited that this is my first year at PS1, and I've loved every second since the moment I stepped foot in this building. Everyone is just so warm and welcoming and embracing, and even the parents, the students, like this has absolutely been probably one of the best starts to a year for me in a new school. So I'm really happy to be here. And, just because you're leaving this part of your life behind as you're getting older, right? You have a new adventure ahead of you, middle school. Real quickly, tell me, like, what's going through your head? You still have a few months and you got the summer break, but what's kind of going through your head in the sense of preparing for middle school?
Well, I'm trying to, like, keep it together and, like, not fool around as much, and I'm trying to, like, prepare myself for it.
Nice. Prepare yourself for it. Because now remember, for those of us that are here at PS1, we don't got a lot of students, right? We're a pretty small community. If you're going to junior high school, some of us might be going across the street to IS 34. You're now going from having a total of 450 plus students here total in PS1 to possibly
tripling it.
400 in just sixth grade alone. So that's a pretty big leap there, and that's a pretty big school. Is there anything that's making you nervous about going to middle school?
No, I'm usually not nervous because I know a lot of kids in that school.
Nice. All right, so you seem like you're pretty prepared, getting ready to go over
And most of my
to middle
friends
school.
in fifth grade are going there.
There you go.
But
Kind of keeping it
Just
together.
like how I said, it's a little bit sad leaving this school because I know most of the fifth graders have a ton of friends in here in younger grades and siblings, brothers, sisters, nephews,
Wow.
cousins.
All right,
And
yeah.
now they're just leaving and going across the street, so they won't see their friends in younger grades or brothers, sisters, or any of that anymore.
Yeah, it's all right. We're only right across the street. We're not too far away, okay? And it's so interesting that you say that because it brings me to our next and final topic of our first podcast here, and that is making friends, building new relationships, right? You've both been in PS1 here for pretty much, right? Since pre-K?
Yeah, since pre-K.
Since pre-K. Ace, you're in 4th grade. Same thing now. Ethan, you're in 5th grade. And again, yeah, some of your friends moving over there, but there's going to be other students coming from all over the place of Staten Island here. So let's talk about that for a second and making friends, even coming into school here, right? When you first, when you first came into this school as a young age, maybe you don't really remember too much, but as you got older, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, how would you go about or giving advice to other students, right? Because we've had some new students come into our building. And again, for the 5th graders that are going to prepare themselves for going next year, but Ace, you wanted to make a new friend. How is Ace going to approach making a new friend? What would you do?
What I would do is really just saying, have fun, man. Do you want to be my friend? I can show you some stuff.
What are some ways, though, that you could possibly, start a conversation with somebody? Yeah, hey, how are you? Introduce yourself, right? My name is Ace, right? My name is Ace. How would you, want to get to know them a little bit more? What are some of your favorite things you like to do?
Hey, I'm Ace, and then, just go to shake his hand.
Give him a handshake.
What's your name? And then they tell me their name, and then, hey, that's a nice name, man. That's a nice name, yeah.
How else would you try to make friends? Would you try to, see if you maybe have something in common with them?
Yeah, I could. That's how I actually started one of my friendships.
Really? Can you tell us about that? What happened?
So I was in about kindergarten, and then so before I made the friend, so the day we had nachos for hot lunch, which I wish we had now, but and then he spilled his nachos on the floor, and then everyone helped pick him up, and I did too. And then after we picked him up and he got another lunch, I was like, hey, do you play Geometry Dash? It's a game that I like to play. And he said, yeah, and that's how I started one of my best
Look at that.
friendships.
Nachos falling on the ground, and then it turned into a blossoming friendship. Ace, that's an awesome story. Okay, sometimes we make friends out of nowhere. Oh.
He is right there.
Wow. Look at that in the audience here. Budding friendship. All right, Ethan, how about you? How do you go about it? And I know the 5th grade, I don't know about you, Ace, at 4th grade, but I know the 5th graders, right? We've talked about this. The 5th graders actually have lunch with the younger students in our building. So that's also kind of got to be a little exciting for the younger students, especially if they see their sibling or whatnot. But, how would you go about making some friends? Maybe before we get into the whole lunch thing, do you have a story kind of like Ace's where you started a friendship, and how did you start that friendship?
A little bit.
Okay.
So, when I made friends with one of my friends, it was in pre-K. So, we barely knew each other at all. And the only reason why we knew each other is because of our parents. But we really became friends because once he was getting picked on, and I, helped him.
Getting picked on and you helped him. How did you help him?
So, I, told them to stop, and they did.
Forceful. I like it. So look at that. You created a friendship. You saw something happening that you didn't like what you were seeing, and you kind of stepped in, which is really interesting because that's certainly going to be another topic of discussion for a future podcast when we're talking about bullying of that nature, right? So really good job there. Now, again, how would you go about, though, and I guess we could look at the example from here in the 5th grade. We had quite a few students come in a little bit later in the year. What is some advice for maybe yourself or maybe some other students, like if you get a new student coming in, or just some tips or advice on how to make new friends?
Maybe, a tip that I would say, try to find something that you guys have in common or like complement each other in a way.
That's very nice. Words of affirmation also helping, right? Complementing one another, okay? And what does it mean for you and your fellow fifth graders? Like I mentioned, you're down in the lunchroom. You have the younger kids down there. You want to set the example. You want to be a role model. How has that been for the fifth grade down in the lunchroom and interacting with those younger students?
Well, actually, some of the fifth graders that are in this room actually helped monitor the pre-K and the kindergarten that we had down there one day. And when we were monitoring, all of us were helping them dump out, line up, and all of that.
And you'd say you'd made a new friendship there, even for some of the kids you might have not known, whether they're siblings or cousins or whatever.
Like, I monitored a class, and now I know, like, every single kid in that class's name.
That's awesome. Okay? So there are certain ways, right, that we can make friendships, right? Be kind to one another. Take a look at the two situations that we had, right? Ace, fallen nachos, boom, made a friendship from that falling nacho incident. We had Ethan, who saw someone getting picked on. He stepped in and said, hey, I don't like what I'm seeing. And then that obviously has a friendship blossom from that. So there are so many different ways that we could make friends. And listen, all it takes is just saying hi to somebody. Even if it doesn't go beyond that, just by saying hi to somebody is really important, especially when we want to make everyone feel welcome. We want to make everyone feel welcome here in our school community, outside of our school community. And listen, it's going to be a little bit of a challenge as well. And you should take this advice, and especially to the other fifth graders that are in this room and anyone that's watching this, getting ready to take the next step in their educational future, and you're going into a new school possibly, and you're going to be meeting new people for the first time. Really get to know them. Just say hi, right? It all starts with a simple one-word answer, right? And that's all there is to it. How do you guys think you did on this first episode of the podcast?
Pretty good.
Pretty good? Yeah? Calm the nerves down a little bit as we got into our conversation? Okay? Audience, how do you think we did here today? Let's hear a round of applause for everybody. Okay? This is going to be a fun and exciting adventure for all of us here at Pause Up. So we obviously cannot wait for everyone to be part of this. We can't wait for everyone to start watching our podcast. And remember, our number one rule of this podcast: when you're watching the Wolfpack podcast, you must howl. But I want to thank Ace and Ethan for being our first two co-hosts on the show. Let's give them a round of applause as well. Thank you to our Pause Up production audience watching our first podcast. Again, special thanks to our principal, Mrs. Petrangelo, Ms. Shahade, and of course, Warner Brothers Discovery for providing us with this equipment. We hope you had a really fun time listening and watching the Wolfpack podcast. We will see you next time. Wolfpack out.